was an awakening to me that people had to live this way, and they did not live within the most wondrous house with many rooms and servants to do everything, and special ones who knew how to cook the most delicious meals and serve them. So very soon after I got back home, back to the lifestyle that I had known, I asked my uncle if he would build me a house. I was in my early 20s and I wanted my own house. I suppose if I had been even 10 or 12, he probably would have. Well, he might have made me wait, but anyway, he said of course he would build me the most wondrous home with many rooms in it, because when I said I needed many rooms. He understood that was to be a young maiden. I was probably thinking of getting married and having small ones, so I would need many rooms. Well, that was not my plan. My plan was to ask some of these young girls to come and live in the house with me, and I would teach them how to read. I would teach them how to cook. I would teach them another lifestyle that they did not know, but they learned very quickly. And I would teach them to take care of their nails. Well, a small point you're thinking, but it was a big point for them. They no longer had to have the bruises on the hands and great welts across the back if they did not quickly do what they were supposed to do. I did not know until I saw this along the roads of the trip back from India. I did not know. I could not even conceive that people would be living in such lack, in such a way as to actually have to scrabble from the dirt, the soil, and to tend a small bit of land. They would fight to the death to keep, and yet spend all the time and energy without tools even. It was incomprehensible at first. So I asked these young women to come and to be with me at a time. I did not go out and just harvest a whole lot, because they were attached to the families that they were with. In other words, there was a fiend of family, so not every girl wanted to come and be separated from them. But some had already been dismissed by their family who said, "Sorry, but we don't have enough food to feed you. You'll have to go and find your own way." And many of the girls, what did they have to trade? On their bodies. So they did what they had to do. And as I speak these words, you can understand. The female gender can feel in the anatomy what was being of value. In other words, enough that they would get their meal. I invited them to come and be with me in the house that my uncle built for me, and he was surprised at what I was doing. But he also had the heart and eyes that had much seen of the world, and he knew the way these girls had to live up to that point was not the easiest. And it was not really the best for civilization, because if a child came forth out of what they were doing in order to have some sustenance, a meal or whatever, the child then was a burden. And what were they going to do with the child? It was difficult to find an answer, and the cycle was repeated. So I did not establish, as has been told about me, a house of prostitution. I actually took ones living on the street, but it was more of a dusty road, and had them come and be with me. I could teach them some of the ancient stories about how our culture was an ancient one, a culture that they were worthy of knowing. So that which I had been gifted, I gave to them, and there were many who in time learned something that they could do, such as cooking, where they could go on to more wealthy places, home-dwelling family, to be part of the family and have a service to give, not just the body. So they learned to value the mind, the voice. They learned to do the healing work. It opened a whole world for them beyond the scrabbling in the dirt. And as I have said, when they were at a place where they had a service that they could give in another household, they moved on and made room for other ones to come in. So as time moved on, and as luck would have it, this handsome young man whom I met in India was getting quite a following of ones wanting to hear what he had to share. Much of what he was sharing was what he was learning in India and some of the other places where he had traveled. And much of what he was sharing was, again, on another level, changing people's lives. There was an excitement about life itself, of being alive and knowing a wealth of past history. So he was doing the same as I was doing, but in a different way. Because he was, well, as he still puts it in his day and time, he had good press, good publicity, and ones wanted to know, what has this one found? What does he have to share? So his grouping was growing because ones wanted to know, is there something more than what I have seen to be life? Is there more? You have in your writings about the multitudes that came to hear Yeshua. So it just happened that we met up again, and there was a rekindling of the heart chakra and the feeling that perhaps there was something that we could, should, or would do together. So I went to my uncle, Yeshua, went to his family and said, we feel that we're being called to be together and to be somehow serve the Lord, to serve a higher purpose. So we said, we want to be married. So we were married in a wonderful ceremony and had a wedding feast which lasted longer than a week because some of the wedding guests had traveled many days to attend. a wedding feast in which the wine was drunk and the wine caskets emptied. The mother of the handsome man being married went to him and asked him to provide more wine, so he turned water into wine. You know who that was. So I came into the family of Mother Mary, a great Jewish mother-in-law, blessed be. She had very strict ideas about how a family should and would be, and she tempered it with love. In other words, she was a very loving mother-in-law. We became very good friends, so there was not a divisiveness. It was not that I was taking her son away, but that he was bringing me into the family. We put the families together. So when you read about the wedding feast at Cana, that was my wedding and his. There is a wealth of treasure in what is left in your histories. Much of my part has been written out because history had been written by men, and I could not be seen as having power. I could not be seen as having equal power with my husband. Yeshua would not be married because he was all in himself, so the story goes. And he was and is all, and it was a perfect marriage. Now, did we ever squabble? Of course we did. I was raised in a good Jewish family, so I knew how to be a good Jewish wife and mother. So there were times Yeshua and I had differing opinions, but our discussions were always tempered with love. There is a saying, an admonition which is very good, wise words, to never go to bed in an argument. Always settle in, and your sleep will be deeper and better. In the writing about him, it was said that ones would call him rabbi, and in the Jewish faith at that time, in order to have the designation as rabbi, you had to be married, a clue that some of the ones who were revising the history missed. As the years went by, much too quickly, Yeshua gathered quite a following of ones who wanted to know about the Father, about his love and the relationship. Yeshua talked about the possibility that if you don't watch your words, the authorities are not going to be happy with you. And he said, but I must speak. I must speak the word of the Lord, the Master of all, the oneness, the Father, Abba, I must speak. So we agreed, his mother and I, but not without some inner misgiving. I guess you would call it, but we knew that to be true. Mary and I were great supporters of each other, because we both loved the same one, in different ways of course, but we loved and supported and understood. The Essene teachings and prophecy, which had been talked about for some centuries, had been preparing the way for Yeshua and also his lineage. Did he have children? Of course he had children. He was a man, I was a woman. We were attracted. We were quite normal and natural. After the crucifixion and the resurrection, it was not safe for the disciples to see him resurrected and walking around, and to see me being with him as if nothing had ever happened. The disciples were being rounded up and questioned, and they were tortured if they would not tell what the authorities wanted them to say. They would tell the truth. Yes, he was dead. The body was deceased. It wasn't a tomb. Yes, he came forth out of the tomb. Yes, he walked with us, and yes, he talked with us. The authorities did not want to hear that, because it did not make sense to them. If one had been crucified, dead, and buried, that had to be the end of this unorthodox teaching. It could not be true of this one who went out on the hillside and taught one, saying, life is a gift from Abba. Treat it as a gift. Be in joy. Joy is your nature. You have heard him say that in this day and time. He knew joy. I knew joy. But it was not safe for him and us after he resurrected the body. So we went to my uncle once again. Uncle Joseph, we said, it is important that we leave for the disciples and the multitudes who followed him. It is not safe for them to spread the word that he is still among us. Can we go on one of your ships to Britain? Being a very loving uncle, he said, of course you can. So we went on one of his ships. We went as the story goes, and it is a truth, to the southern part of what is now known as France. And we lived in a small village there, learned the language. We were good at languages and became part of the village. And when it was seen that we did not age the same as the villagers, we said, well, you know, our ancestors were long-lived once. But after a while, they began to add up the years. So we would say, well, there's a family in another area, and we have to go visit them. And we would travel perhaps a week journey or more away. What you have with your technology now, which is so instant, it would be a wee bit more difficult today. But in that day and time, if you went like a week's journey away, there would be not too much of the discourse back and forth to give one a clue. So we would stay in the village for a while until again it became a bit apparent that we were not going to get the gray hair. We knew that one does not have to age, which is why you do not look your age. It is with your ancestry. It is true for many of you who hear this story. All of you are young at heart. It is only the way to be, at least in the most fun. So when Yeshua speaks with you and tells you that he lived 600, 700, 800 years, yes, we did. After a while, we had traveled everywhere. You have the legends of us traveling across what is now called Russia, across the Bering Strait to the Americas, every area of the world, because we knew our oneness with all brothers and sisters, no matter the color of the skin, the shape of the eyes, the shape of the forehead and the chin, etc. We knew that all are of the Father, and we knew that there were teachings, legends in every culture which we wanted to know about. So we went and lived with the people of every area. It was definitely an adventure. All of life is meant to be an adventure. So that is my story. It is my history, her story. I will say to you that the times are changing. You have felt this happening, and more of the female energy is rising up. And it will continue to be a place where it will be a bit over the balance, and then it will come back to balance. So never fear, and be in joy. So be it.